Hi everyone, my name is Zach Barber and I am going to be your instructor for Philosophy 103, Moral Problems. I'm very excited to work with you this semester. It's going to be an extremely unusual one, and as I'm sure you've already gotten a sense of things so far, it has been a bit unusual and strange. So, as I said in my previous writing to you, I ask for your patience, for your flexibility, and your understanding. We will get through this semester together, and hopefully we'll get to really dig into some of the most interesting questions of human existence. That's what this class is all about. Moral philosophy, ethics. What is right? What is wrong? How should we live our lives? What sorts of things are good and what sorts of things are bad? In my mind, you don't really get much more important questions than those. I hope to convince you of that this semester, or at least warm you up to that idea. So, I should say, my computer is malfunctioning right now. It is in an Apple store, currently being repaired. I'm recording this from my phone, and so things might seem a little bit strange. The sound quality probably isn't all that great, but again, work with me here, and we'll do our best. Let's see. So the purpose of this first lecture is to introduce myself to you, and to go through a bit of the syllabus, which I will do in a minute. I'm going to highlight the really important aspects of it. And then at the end of the lecture, I want to talk a little bit about one of the most important ethicists, one of the most important philosophers who's ever lived. His name was Socrates, and I'm sure you've heard of him. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him at the end of the lecture, and hopefully get your philosophical juices flowing. So let's see where to begin. As I said, my name is Zachary Barber. You can call me Zach. I am a grad student. I am not a professor. I'm very excited to be teaching this course, though. I suppose I'm an adjunct professor. But in any case, the title isn't important. The label isn't important. I'm very excited to be teaching this course. I've taught ethics in a few different formats before, but this one is going to be particularly fun and interesting, I think, the hybrid format with discussions and with a lot of online content. I am writing my dissertation in moral philosophy, so this is my area of specialty. I am mostly interested actually in Buddhist philosophy and how it relates to virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is a theory of ethics that we'll be talking about at some point in the semester. And I'm trying to use in my dissertation ideas from the Buddha to shed some new and interesting light on virtue ethical theory. So you're welcome to talk to me about that at any point if you have questions, or if you have questions generally about philosophy or anything. You're welcome to come to my office hours, so let's discuss those. I'm going to try to hold office hours outside in the academic quad in between Lattimore and Dewey. There is a circular bench right in the middle of the quad there, and it's my hope that at least for 1 hour a week I'll be able to hold office hours there. So Tuesdays after class, I'm going to walk straight there, and I'm going to sit down and, of course, properly distance from everyone. But hopefully we'll be able to carry on some discussions out there as long as the weather permits us to. I'll also have office hours via Zoom, and I'll be available by appointment, so you're welcome to email me if you'd like to talk to me over Zoom. I'd be happy to schedule those and have a chat with you. I may end up setting up a Zoom hour where I'll also just be sort of sitting on Zoom, probably in my office or at my desk, and you guys will be able to just sort of hop on there if you want to talk to me over Zoom. But I encourage you, if you can, come to my outdoor office hours, and we'll practice, of course, proper social distancing. We'll have to maintain over 6 feet of distance, and we'll have to wear masks. But it should be, I think, a nice way to hold office hours, at least while the weather allows us to. And yeah, so come there to get to know me. Come there to talk about philosophy. Obviously, the course content is something that we should be discussing, and I can help you with that. But we can talk about other topics too. I want to get to know you guys as much as possible over the semester. And the office hours are really a great way to do that. So again, that's Tuesday, right after class from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the circular benches in the academic quad. And of course, if you are taking the class entirely online, I'm more than happy to meet you over Zoom. And even if you're not taking the class entirely online, I'm happy to meet you over Zoom. So, talk to me about those things. Okay, I'll say one other thing about myself. I'm currently recording this video from Vermont. I'm sort of stuck here. My parents live here. I was visiting them when my computer broke, and I took my computer immediately to an Apple store, and they still haven't. They're repairing it. So I have to wait here for it to be repaired. I guess that lets you a little bit more into my life, and I am enjoying the time up here in Vermont. It's been very pretty. I've been getting outside a bunch, and doing some reflective thought out in nature, as I find it is conducive for that sort of thing. Hope you do too. Anyway, let's get to the syllabus. I think I've adequately introduced myself. I've told you about office hours. You should, on your own, read through the syllabus very, 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 very carefully. You should read every word of it. It is the Bible for our class, and many, many things that you need to know can be found right there in the syllabus. So please take the time to really read through that thoroughly. I will here try to highlight just the really important aspects of what's contained in the syllabus. But I'm not going to spend that much time doing so, because I'm going to expect that you have read through this document entirely on your own, and you've understood it entirely. There may be a few things that I should clarify in this video lecture, though. So, on to it. So here's how the course is going to work in a nutshell. Every week you're going to have a list of readings. You should spend a lot of time very, very carefully reading through those at the very beginning of the week. Digest and internalize all of the information in those readings. Take notes, highlight things. I strongly recommend that you read these items on paper, because research actually shows that people learn better when they read on paper as opposed to electronic sources like on iPads or iPhones. So please print out the materials, buy the course textbook, and read your assigned readings very, very carefully. Once you've completed the readings, you should complete a very quick and very short 5-minute quiz on Blackboard every week by Tuesday at 9:40 a.m. Okay? It needs to be completed by that time, because that's the time when when the first group of the alphabet, the first half of the alphabet, will meet with me for the first discussion of the week. So I am requiring that everyone complete the quiz, which you'll find on Blackboard, before Tuesday at 9:40 a.m. each week. There is an exception. The first week, there is a quiz this week, but it's not due until Friday at midnight. So please complete it by this Friday at midnight. These quizzes are designed to encourage you to do the readings very carefully. And as long as you do the readings carefully, you should have no problem acing the quizzes. In fact, I think that these are going to be a really easy addition to your grade. As long as you're doing the readings carefully, the questions are pretty basic comprehension questions, so you should be able to answer them and get 100%. The quiz grade will add up to 20% of your final grade. So you can get a pretty solid grade on this if you are keeping up with the readings and carefully completing the quiz. The quiz will usually be about 3 to 5 questions, and you'll have exactly 5 minutes to answer those questions on Blackboard. Once you start the quiz, you have to finish it. You'll have only 5 minutes to do so. There should be instructions on the Blackboard page, but I'm unfamiliar with administering quizzes in exactly this way, so bear with me if things aren't quite smooth at the beginning. So, once again, click on the quiz. You'll find it says Reading Quizzes. It's right on Blackboard. Click on that. Once you've carefully completed the readings, click Start Quiz. And once you start it, you'll have only 5 minutes to finish it. And I've designed it that way because I don't want you to flip back through the readings. You should know the answers to the quiz right off the top of your head because you've so thoroughly internalized the content of those readings. Okay, so those are the quizzes, those are the readings. After those are completed, I'm going to be meeting with 1/2 of the in-person class at a time. So on Tuesdays, I'll meet with the first half of the alphabet, and on Thursdays, I'll meet with the other half of the alphabet. The expectation is that you'll have done the readings very carefully, you'll have completed the quiz, and you'll also have watched the lecture video. The lecture video is meant to provide the background that you need to very thoroughly sort of understand the readings. And it's my goal to point out other sort of noteworthy philosophical ideas, to explain what's in the readings, to sort of supplement the readings in an educationally helpful way. So watch the lecture video also before coming to discussion. I should say that the lecture video will probably also help you on the quizzes. If you watch the lecture videos even before doing the readings, it will probably help you with the readings themselves. So I encourage you to do that if you can. Though I will probably make most of the quiz questions related to the readings themselves and not so much the lecture video. But maybe I'll do both. So I require you to watch the lecture videos, do the readings and the quizzes. Tuesdays will be discussions with the first half of the alphabet on this material. Thursdays will be discussions with the second half of the alphabet on this material. Now, these discussions will be streamable live on Zoom. So for those of you taking the course online, you'll be able to join us for one of these discussions. And you should basically just go to the discussion that corresponds with your last name. So if you're in the first half of the alphabet, A through M, you should attend the Tuesday discussion. If you're in the latter half of the alphabet, you should attend the Thursday discussion. Now, I should also say, I did actually cut off the exact grouping. I think for the discussion groups, and you'll find that in a Blackboard announcement that I made about a week ago. But that might change because the numbers and the enrollment in this course will fluctuate over the next few weeks probably. So I'm probably going to change the exact cutoff names as to, especially if you're right on the edge there, if your last name starts with an M, or right around there in the alphabet. You might start by going to Tuesday and then end up going to a Thursday session, or vice versa. So for those of you who are right on the cusp there, just bear with me and go to the session that makes most sense. Go to the session that corresponds with what I've assigned in that Blackboard announcement about a week ago. And if the numbers aren't quite right, then we'll just have to finagle things and reassign your discussion section. But it shouldn't matter because the content of these discussions is pretty much going to be the same. Obviously, the discussion might drift into a different direction depending on the questions the students have and depending on the answers that I have and the topics that we take up. But my goal is to really just dig into this material with you guys in a live setting. And our Zoom participants will, of course, be encouraged to participate as well and ask questions. And let's see, our Zoom participants will be encouraged to ask in. Yes, but if you're taking the class entirely asynchronously, so that is if you're in a time zone that makes it impossible for you to zoom in to our discussions live, then you are welcome to watch the course or watch the discussion asynchronously. And you're allowed to participate online and make discussion posts that way. So these discussions will be recorded and posted to Blackboard, and you're welcome to go through them. You're welcome to watch them there and make posts on our Blackboard forum to participate. So let's talk more about the Blackboard forum. That's an important aspect of the course. Participation generally will be strongly encouraged, and it's a really big part, really important part of this class. I think that we learn best by participating. I think that in philosophy especially, we need to really grapple with the ideas. I think that we really need to engage with them, wrestle with them, question them, object to them. So I strongly encourage you to participate passionately in every topic and question that we take up in this course. So you can participate in this class in two different ways. For those of you taking the class in person, you can participate in person. You can speak up, you can ask questions, you can challenge things that I say in class. You can challenge things that other students say. And I encourage you to do all of that, as long as you do so in a kind and respectful way, of course. And you'll be able to earn participation points, and you'll be able to earn a good participation grade by doing that. I should say, if you're zooming in live to the class, you can also participate that way. Ask a question. Voice your concerns over Zoom. I think we'll be able to hear you in the classroom, and we'll be able to respond to you as if you were sitting right there with us. The wonders of modern technology. Now, that's one way of participating. The other way of participating is by posting on our Blackboard online discussion forum. Okay? I realize that not everybody is learns best by participating live, right? And having a live discussion. Though I think we should all work towards that, and I think we should all strive to cultivate that skill of being able to participate in a live philosophical discussion. It's okay if you feel like you're not quite there yet. If you choose not to participate in our live discussions, either via Zoom or in person. Then you are required to post on our Blackboard discussion forum, okay? So the asynchronous students will also have to do this because they're not participating in the class live in any format, in any way. So, to participate on our Blackboard forum, you should make 2 posts per week where you are responding to what other people have said, where you are engaging carefully with the philosophical ideas and arguments in the readings or ones that have come up in the lecture video or in class. There are criteria on the syllabus for making an adequate discussion post. Please read through those criteria very, very carefully. They are found right here on page 2 of the syllabus. Okay, I'm not going to read through them now, but you need to follow these criteria in order to earn full credit for your discussion posts. And again, you should be posting 2 per week if you are not participating in our live discussions, either via Zoom or in person. If you are participating, so making good comments, asking good questions in some live format, right? Either via Zoom or, I guess I should say in some synchronous format, either via Zoom or in person. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I got a text message on my phone and it distracted me. In-person discussion contributions. You should strive to make good comments and ask good questions in a live setting, right? Either via Zoom or I guess I should say in a synchronous way, either via Zoom or in person. And you should really strive to say a number of things in class, right? I'm requiring that the students who don't do this make at least 2 contributions per week. So your contributions in class should be about the same. You should say at least 2, hopefully interesting, intelligent things per week in class discussions. Okay? So it's generally how the discussion component of the course is going to work. Okay? And I'll have you note that that is 10% of your grade. So your discussion participation, if it's synchronous, it's 10%, and also if it's asynchronous, it should be about, it will be 10% of your grade. Now, you're welcome from week to week to sort of flip-flop. You can choose not to post in, you can choose not to speak in class. Maybe you're not choosing that, but it might happen that one week you don't speak in class, so that week you should make a discussion post. And vice versa. You can choose not to make discussion posts and instead choose to participate live on a separate week. So I encourage that you just do that in one of those ways from week to week. Let's see. I did not mention our textbook, but you should secure yourself a copy. It is The Fundamentals of Ethics by Russ Schaefer Landau. You should get the 2nd edition. The 2nd edition is a lot cheaper than all of the later editions, and it contains pretty much all of the material that we need, all the information that we need. So you should be able to find a cheap copy of that on Amazon or online somewhere, or at the bookstore here at U of R. Let's see. The major grades for this class will be your essay assignments. And I will hand out detailed prompts of those about 2 weeks before their due dates. There are 3 of them. And they will, the prompts, that is, will guide you through a sort of philosophical topic where you're going to be developing an argument of your own. So I'm not going to talk too much about them because I'm going to give out really thorough prompts in a few weeks once we're worrying about those. But yes, those are the major elements of the course, graded elements of the course. Okay, let's see. I think I've explained everything adequately here as far as the structure of the course goes. We've talked about readings, we've talked about quizzes, we've talked about discussions, talked about essays, the course textbook. Okay, another very, very important aspect of the course that I should bring up immediately is academic honesty. This is an ethics course, so I expect not to have to deal with any cases of plagiarism, but I have in the past, and unfortunately, they have been in courses in ethics. So that's a real pain, and it's a real shame. It's obviously deeply unethical to plagiarize and to cheat, and it's just a huge nuisance for everyone involved. It's a huge nuisance and problem for me, and even more of a nuisance and problem for you when it comes to dealing with the Board of Academic Dishonesty and the penalties that come with academic dishonesty. Please read very, very carefully through the policies related to academic dishonesty. I'll say that whenever you are using the ideas or the phrasing of another author in your work, it must be cited. That includes on Blackboard discussion posts. That includes even in person. When you're having a discussion with me and you use someone's idea to respond, you should cite them. You should say, oh, this idea comes from Russ Schaefer Landau, our textbook author, or another philosopher that you've read. So please be sure to always, always cite the original source when you are using ideas from it, or even just phrasing from it, terminology from it, right? Your Writing 105 course, which you should take your freshman year at Rochester, will teach you carefully how to avoid violations of academic dishonesty. But I'm sure that if you're conscientious about it on your own, there won't be any problems. So please be very, very careful there. Cite everything that comes from other sources. Language, phrases that come from other sources needs to be in quotes. Any verbatim passages need to be in quotes. Okay, but that should be very basic. So don't cheat. It's horrible for everyone involved. So please, please, please avoid academic dishonesty, avoid plagiarism, and do your best to cite. There are a number of support services for the class, and I'll have you look through those on your own. They are on page 5 of the syllabus. Please read through those. And I believe that those are all the important aspects that we need to deal with. As you'll see, there is a schedule on the last part of the syllabus, and it specifies how exactly we will be meeting, right? So the first week of class, we don't have any in-person meetings, as you can note here. I will not be meeting with either discussion section. The lecture video link I will post right here. That's this video. Should have a link right here. And you probably already will have clicked on it if you're watching this video. But anyway, here are the readings. You should read Russ Schaefer Landau's introduction. That's the introduction of our course textbook. And I also want you to read The Apology by Plato, which is the story of Socrates' death trial. We'll get to that in just a second. I'm a huge geek when it comes to finding other interesting philosophical resources online, or mostly in podcasts. I'm a huge podcast fan. So I'm often going to post other related content related to the course in this column. Either YouTube videos, podcasts, lectures, other items related to what we're covering. And I strongly encourage you to engage with this material. It's not required, I've just made it recommended, but it really will fill out your understanding of what's going on in the course. And it will provide you with more ideas and angles to approach these topics, especially for your essays. So I do encourage you to engage with this material. And then this is your assignment column, of course, which will mark exactly what is due in each week. As far as your assignments go, there will be quizzes due each week. As you can see, this is the quiz for this week is due Friday by 11:59 p.m. So please complete that. You'll find it on Blackboard again. And then, as you can see, your first essay is due October 15th. And that is the syllabus. So, I'm going to pause the video here. Email me with questions about the syllabus, or bring them to class discussions next week. I hope that this clarified everything. I'm going to pause the video here so I can take a quick break, and then I'm going to record your lecture on Socrates. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Socrates. So, I hope that that's cleared everything up. Oh, I will say one more thing. As far as video lectures go, my goal is to post those every Saturday. So I'll post the video lectures Saturdays so that you can usually watch them before doing the readings and before doing the quiz, which is due Tuesday at 9:40 a.m. for everyone. So, lecture videos should be posted by Saturdays. At least that's my goal, is to have them done by then. And that should give you enough time to engage with the other materials before the Tuesday session and the Tuesday due date for the quiz. Cool. With that, I turn to Socrates. Okay, so now I'd like to tell you a little bit about Socrates. Socrates was an ancient Athenian philosopher, Greek philosopher, who's arguably one of the most influential people to have ever lived. He developed a reputation in ancient Athens and ancient Greece by going around to famous, aristocratic, important people throughout the city, and he would ask them philosophical questions. He would ask them to define ideas like justice or virtue or courage, and he would inquire with them about what those concepts were, or what it meant to be a just or virtuous person. The Greeks, I should say, did think a person could be just. That is, they thought that the term didn't only apply to cities or political bodies, as we use the term today. So, Socrates developed this method of really cross-examining his interlocutors, that is, his conversation partners. He would ask them these questions, and they would go back and forth about these ideas. And usually what happened was Socrates would draw out internal contradictions or problems with these people's ideas about concepts like justice, for instance. And that would frustrate them pretty deeply. He could point out flaws in their reasoning or in their thinking. And those flaws were supposed to demonstrate that they didn't understand these really, really important concepts in the first place. They didn't understand what justice was, even if they were a politician. They didn't understand what courage was, even if they were a soldier. And many people found this to be deeply embarrassing. But Socrates looked at it as a really important inquiry, right? He thought that if we needed to live well, if we wanted to live well, we would need to know the answers to these sorts of questions. We would need to know the definitions of these sorts of concepts. And that all seems right. So things got worse because Socrates, in pursuing this philosophical activity and in pursuing these conversations with people, he garnered a sort of following of the youth of Athens. A bunch of young people, mostly young men at the time, would follow Socrates around and watch him sort of intellectually spar with these famous aristocrats and people throughout the city. And they would get a great laugh at it. They were, I think, very interested in the intellectual content of the discussions, right? But they were also, I think, interested in seeing these snobby, famous people embarrassed by Socrates and demonstrated to be ignorant by Socrates' cross-examination, his methods. So, I should say that Plato, another hugely famous and influential philosopher who came right after Socrates, was one of the youth. He was one of the teenagers who would follow Socrates around the city and watch him question and cross-examine other people. This went on for a while, and eventually Socrates really pissed off a lot of important people in the city. He pissed them off so much, in fact, that they held a trial. They arrested him and held a trial to convict him to death for his activities. They charged him with corrupting the youth through these activities, and with atheistic thinking, with disbelieving in the accepted gods of the time. They thought that he was impious. So those are the two charges for which they brought him to trial. And the reading that I'm asking you to do for this week, in addition to the introduction to our textbook, is the story of Socrates' death trial. Socrates speaks in this document and defends himself against these charges. And this document should give you a real idea of the kind of character that Socrates was. He was a towering intellect, very, very, very brilliant person, and an amazingly persuasive arguer. So the apology, again, that's the name of this document, the account of his death trial. It is a document written by Plato, who was in attendance at the trial. And it's believed to be very accurate by most scholars to the thought and the actions of the real Socrates. So even though it was written by Plato, and even though I should say Socrates never wrote anything down himself, all of his philosophy was carried out in person and in conversation. This account written by Plato is supposed to be pretty accurate as to portraying exactly what Socrates really stood for, what kind of person he was. So I encourage you to read it very, very carefully. It's fun, and it should give you an idea of just how cool, how sort of intellectually exciting a person Socrates really was. And I think there's a real reason why teenagers from around the city would follow him around and watch him make fools of these aristocrats. So that's a little story about the life of Socrates. Without giving too much away, I will say that philosophy for him proved to be a pretty dangerous and subversive activity, because he was in fact sentenced to death. He did in fact drink a hemlock poison that the officers of Athens administered to him. He did pay for his activities in a sense. But I'll leave you to the apology to sort of go a bit more into that stuff, and leave you thinking about whether I'll leave you thinking about how costly death really was for him. He says a few things about death in the Apology, and also in other documents by Plato that are an account of his death and his final days. So another one would be the Phaedo, which is another dialogue by Plato, another document that he wrote. It's a conversation between Socrates and a number of his friends right on the day that he dies. I'd encourage you to read that as well, although it's not a reading for this course. In any case, that's a little bit of background about Socrates and his life, and just how interesting a figure he was. But I want to end class today by drawing your attention to two important aspects of Socrates' philosophy. It's hard to pin down exactly what Socrates really thought, as I said, because he didn't write anything down. Everything that he stood for came out in the conversations that he had with figures throughout Athens. And things get even more confusing because Plato, his student, right, one of the teenagers who followed him around, Plato used Socrates as a character throughout all of his philosophical work. So Plato would write dialogues, conversations between Socrates and other people. And he would often use Socrates, especially in his middle and later work, he would use Socrates to illustrate his own ideas. He would use Socrates merely as a mouthpiece. The character in these dialogues who would argue for what Plato thought was true. And that makes things confusing because it's hard sometimes to distinguish the Platonic Socrates from the real Socrates. That is, what Plato stood for versus what the real Socrates stood for. But these two theses, these two philosophical doctrines that I'm about to share with you, are thought to be really actually a part of what's the original true Socrates thought. They show up very, very early on in a lot of Plato's work, so they're thought to be accurate representations of what Socrates believed was true. So the first doctrine I'm going to share is Socrates believed that there was no such thing as what the Greeks called akrasia, which is a Greek term meaning weakness of will. So we think that you can exhibit weakness of will pretty commonly and easily when, for instance, you have that second piece of chocolate cake for dessert, even though you know you shouldn't. Right? You're acting against your better judgment. You are judging that the second piece of cake will be bad for you, but you're still going through with it anyway. A better example of akrasia would be, or another example of akrasia would be judging something to be morally wrong and yet still going through with it. So let's say if you're a vegetarian, you believe that it's wrong to eat animals, and you still go through with it. You cave, say, and eat a steak or a hamburger. Those would be examples of weakness of will. You're acting against your better judgment. And Socrates famously argued that there was no such thing as weakness of will. He argued that all wrongdoing or any acting against your better judgment is in fact the result of ignorance. So whenever people do wrong, he thought, they didn't know what the right thing to do was. Or whenever people give in to doing something like eating the cake that's bad for them, they didn't know what the right thing to do was. They didn't know what was in fact in their best interests at the time. So this is a really, really ethically interesting thesis, I think, because it suggests that acting rightly is merely a matter of knowing what's right. As long as you know what's right, you will act in accordance with that knowledge. It's a really powerful and interesting and counterintuitive, I think, thought. We are in a class in moral philosophy, in ethics, and we are really trying to uncover what the right things to do are. We're trying to distinguish good from bad, right from wrong. And what Socrates is saying here is that if we are successful in this investigation, and if we uncover the right answers here, then we will behave in accordance with them. Now that just doesn't seem quite right to me, because, I, for one, I'm pretty sympathetic to veganism and vegetarian ideas. I think that animals do feel pain, and so it's probably wrong to kill them and cause suffering to them. But I still give in to my craving sometimes for meat, and I think that it's probably wrong that I do that, but I give into it. So it doesn't seem like my intellectual knowledge of the wrongness of meat eating guides my behavior in this way that Socrates is suggesting. So I want you to think more about that. Maybe Socrates really is on to something, and maybe there's a way of rescuing this anti-akrasia thesis. Maybe there is some sense in which weakness of will doesn't really exist. And when I eat meat, for instance, I am acting in ignorance in some sense. So think more about that. Reflect on it. Is there something to it? Is acting rightly merely a matter of knowing what's right? You're welcome to reflect on that point in your discussion posts for this week. And I should say, to go back to those, forgot to mention, I would like everyone this week to make a discussion post. We are not meeting in person this week, so I thought it would be a good idea to test out the forum on Blackboard and have everyone introduce themselves to everyone else, and include one short reflection on Socrates and his philosophical ideas here. So please do so. And this first thesis is something that I invite you to reflect on and respond to. Is acting rightly merely a matter of knowing what's right? Now, the second philosophical doctrine that I want to talk about, that Socrates stood for, is the idea that the unexamined life is not worth living. This is a famous quote that you'll actually come across in the Apology, which is the reading for this week, one of the readings. Socrates boldly asserts that the unexamined life is not worth living. And what he means by this is that if we're not really thinking about our aims in life and our values and where we're headed, our goals, and if we're not thinking about really how to live well and what's good in life, what sorts of things we should pursue, then Socrates believed, I think, that we would be sort of steered about by external forces in the world. We would be swept along with the crowd. We would allow other people to determine how we live. We would allow tradition and culture to dictate the way that we conduct ourselves. We would really, in some sense, be no better than an animal that doesn't have the capacity for rational thought. We would be swept along with those sort of external currents, and we wouldn't live a very autonomous life. Socrates thought that there was deep value in living autonomously and living in an examined way. He thought that we really ought to be examining these fundamental ideas about existence and how one ought to live in order to live well, in order to live good lives. And I want you to think about this. I want you to think about whether Socrates is right. And I also want you to think about what sort of things count as examination. People often take Socrates' quote to apply solely to philosophy. Right? Philosophy is clearly one way, one major way of examining your life, right? Thinking very carefully and rigorously about what sorts of things matter, what sorts of things you should be pursuing. But maybe there are other ways too. Engaging with literature or art, having conversations with friends. Are those ways of examining life also? And if so, are they adequate for the sort of examination that Socrates was advocating? Are they adequate for leading the direction of your life positively? Or perhaps we have to be a bit more philosophical and rigorous about things. We need to employ this sort of Socratic cross-examination method to ourselves and discover, by way of this method, what's best for us. So maybe we all, in some sense, do need to be philosophers. 2 final thoughts on that. There are 2 novelists who were compelled to respond to Socrates on this point. The famous novelist George Eliot and the more contemporary novelist Saul Bellow, they both thought that over-examining one's life is bad, and that we could get too caught up in this Socratic pursuit of philosophical inquiry and examination of life. So I think Saul Bellow puts it well. He says that Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living, but the over-examined life makes you wish you were dead. And I wonder if there's also some truth to that. I'll have you note, though, that the only way we could discover whether Bello is right is by examining it, by investigating it. And presumably, if we came to the conclusion that he was right, we could also use reason, examination, to justify, that is, to legitimate less investigation. That is, if we discover through reason that we live better lives if we don't examine things all the time, then we could prevent ourselves justifiably from examining things all the time. And we could discover that through the use of reason and examination. We could discover that through Socrates' own methods. So, please reflect on all of these interesting ideas and post about them on our Blackboard forum. I hope that you found some of this fun. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person next week. I will be meeting with the first half of the alphabet, as I said, on Tuesday, September 1st, and the other half on September 3rd, Thursday, during our normal class time. Email me if you have any questions, or you're welcome to ask them in discussion next week. And I am really excited to have everybody on board this semester. Very looking forward to examining our lives together. This is my cat. His name is Mino. Mino, say hi. He doesn't examine his life very much, to be honest. He begs me to come out on walks like this, and he looks at birds and chases them and sleeps. Right? Yeah. He's probably mad at me that I'm talking about him now. But yeah, he doesn't really lead a very examined life, to be honest. So, is there something going on here? Like, would Socrates object to the lack of examination inherent in his life? Or is it the case that us humans have something particular and peculiar about our nature that makes examining life necessary, or at least ethically important? Whereas on the other hand, cats might lack this feature, and they might be justified, right, in leading an unexamined life. If so, what accounts for this difference? What do we have that cats don't?